I'm Ken Rockwell here on kenrockwell.tv. Let's take a quick look at how to use studio strobes in general and specifically the Godox SK400II 5 or V, depending on your preferences. When you buy these, they either come with or without this reflector. This is a standard Bowens S mount. You push this lever this way, and then you can pull out these three pulls. Be careful not to hit this tube. In fact, I wouldn't even touch this because there's probably about 500 volts across here normally. In fact, always. And then the trigger is probably 5 kilovolts through that little wire. Don't touch that. Also, if it doesn't kill you, which it could, honestly, this is enough to kill you. If it doesn't kill you, it could break the glass, and you can get replacement tubes. Don't do that. You can get all kinds of umbrellas and soft boxes, and this is an industry standard mount. I prefer using this reflector because I use it with umbrellas, which I mount. Well, of course, the umbrella has a shaft. You want to poke through this little punch out in the reflector when you get it, and that way your shaft runs through here and can go into here. These mount on standard 5/8 inch light stands, and I find I can actually snug this down enough to go on the little wimpy 3/8 inch light stand that I have for my Novatrons, but I don't know if I do that. These are not international. This one goes from 100 to 120 volts for the power supply. You're going to need another one to run on 240, so be careful. If you're going internationally, this might not be the one for you. But let's take a look at some of our controls here. This is so simple to operate. I only had to look at the book to figure out what I needed. Here we go. To get optical triggering. This is a regular switch. So you can leave this on, plug these in the wall, and whenever the power comes up, they'll come up exactly how you had them set. It was so simple. This set knob here simply varies my power. Easy peasy. It goes down to 1/16. Or I guess that would turn it off. Now you'll notice the test light's blinking. That's the ready light. The reason it's blinking is the capacitor in here stores energy. You just had the thing set to full power. It still has a full charge in its capacitor, and it's going to stay that way until you push test to fire it off at full power, and now it recharges it only to 1/16. The beep you can turn on and off. It says buzz, it really means beep. You'll see the icon for that. And the beeper goes off to tell you that it's recycled, which considering it recycles in just 1 second, even at full power, and much less at lower powers, I don't know why you'd need that. It's basically lets you know something went off. Mod off is the modeling light. You can leave it off. You can have it proportional to how you set the flash intensity, or just leave it at 100%, or you can vary the percentage manually to your choice of percentages. Optical triggering they call S. Optical triggering means it fires from simply a flash unit or infrared trigger on your camera. I prefer to use just a small flash on my camera. I don't even buy a trigger. You'll see it says S or S1 as I push the button. S1 is a standard optical trigger. S2 is for use with cameras that might be firing a pre-flash. Now, I don't know why you'd be firing a pre-flash because your camera should be all set to manual. Manual exposure is what we use with Studio Flash. We set this all by trial and error by looking at the playback. If you're shooting film, you can get a flash meter, which should predict how much light is actually coming from the flash before you actually have to go off and shoot some film and get some Polaroids back. If you want to set up radio slaves, that's the group and channel controls here. And you push these or tap them, and you can set them accordingly. What's kind of clever is this oddball little display here that looks like dip switches. Well, there's no dip switches on here. It's set electronically. To set those, you hold this down to set the channel, and then you'll notice as you're setting the channel numbers, the dip switch indicators look like they're changing. That is to help you, instead of doing binary coded decimal transformations in your head, if you want to set channel 12, that's what channel 12 would look like if you have a trigger that you're using on a camera that requires that being set manually. But I don't use that. Actually, to be honest, I leave the radio control on. If you want to turn off the radio control off, if you hold both of these in, there we go, the antenna icon's gone. You won't have to worry about, heaven forbid, the neighbors triggering your strobes. Since I work in my own studio, the only thing triggering this is the flash that's on my camera. This port is for Godox's USB-powered receivers. I don't know that you would need that because 2.4 gigahertz and optical is built into this. You would only probably need that if you have a system that's running on 433 megahertz. This 3.5 millimeter socket here is for wired sync. I don't think anybody's used wired sync since the 1960s. Wired sync is the way we used to have to do things with flash bowls, but to be honest, you don't want to do that because if you have a cord attached to your camera, believe me, you're going to trip over that cord and pull your camera to its destruction. The fuse goes right here. This comes with spare fuses. When you set the power level, I just set this knob, but you also can press that and it'll go back in. Notice when I hit set, now I can also set the brightness of the modeling light. A caution is that I discovered that the modeling light is not exactly proportional to the strobe intensity. It's only about 5/8 proportional. Every stop that I change the flash power, the modeling light, when I measure it with my various light meters, only changes by 5/8 of a stop. In other words, if you set this thing 4 stops dimmer, the modeling light is only 2.5 stops dimmer. So I don't know of anybody who actually uses the modeling lights today for modeling and trying to set lighting ratios. That's something we did back in the days of film, when Polaroid film was expensive. Today, on a digital camera, again, I set the exposures and I set the lighting and the contrast ratios and so forth simply by taking a shot and looking at it out of my camera. And that's it. There's a more in-depth guide at kenrockwell.com. The links are in my description. Thanks again for watching Ken Rockwell here on kenrockwell.tv.